In this episode, I talk with Dr. Cristina Cavezza, a clinical psychologist and coach with over 15 years' experience helping women manage their emotions better so that they are less likely to turn to food for comfort. In this episode, we talk about a whole range of different things that women face when they're going through the perimenopause and beyond, but also when they are mothering through this as well. We talk about the idea of how it is important to try and tolerate discomfort as well as working with the pressures of being a perfect mum. It's such a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to the Happy Thriving Mums podcast, the show that talks about the simple actions busy mums like you can take to prioritise your own happiness, health and fitness. And it doesn't stop there. This show also includes amazing stories from inspiring women who help others to be the best version of themselves. Because if you feel great, you thrive, and so does your family. Let's get started. Hello, Cristina. Welcome to the Happy Thriving Mums podcast. I'm so delighted to have you on as a guest.
Thank you, Amanda, for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Great. Well, it's quite exciting because I'm in the UK and Christina, you're over in Australia. So I think, is it nearly bedtime for you?
Yes, it is.
Where it's 10 a.m. over here in the UK. So the fact that we've managed to meet up through the time zones is brilliant. So thank you for that. Right. So my first question to all my guests is always what I call the school run pitch. So you've heard of elevator pitches, but this is the school run pitch. So you've got about 45 seconds between drop off and dashing to your next stop when another parent asks you, so what is it that you do again? What would you say?
I'd say I'm a psychologist and a coach, and I help women age 35 plus manage food cravings so that they feel more in control of their eating habits.
Amazing. Well, I think as a mum and just through my own kind of just life, I know that I have a tendency sometimes to like rely on food to make me feel a certain way. And I don't know if many of your clients are in a similar situation.
Absolutely. So, what I found is I work a lot with women who are going through the transition to perimenopause and menopause. And that can happen. I suppose some people don't realize that they're actually in perimenopause because it can happen quite young. The whole sort of process can take, they say roughly for some women, it can be like 20-year process. So, we could effectively be in the early stages of perimenopause when we're like 35, um, or early 40s, most definitely. So what I've come to experience, both personally and professionally, is that during that transition we're more likely to crave sugary, salty, and fatty foods. And we're also more likely to be stressed and fatigued. And this can lead us to make poor food choices or to use food to feel better, like to comfort ourselves.
And I think as well, like looking at it from a parent and a mum's point of view, I think quite a lot of time you get a mixed set of all of those things because you wonder if like the fatigue and the tiredness is through just parenting and the kind of like ongoing challenges that you face and all the things that you have to do whilst you're managing being a mum, being a business owner, going to work, all of those things. And you kind of think, am I just a bit tired from all of that? But actually, maybe there is this kind of like also other underlying situation of kind of, as you said, these perimenopausal symptoms that maybe we're just not appreciating that it's much of a broader kind of web which is being intertwined within us.
Yeah, absolutely. There is an interplay of factors there. And I think a lot of us are having children later too. So my own experience of motherhood was I became a first-time mother to twins at the age of 40.
Mm.
So effectively, even though wasn't really aware of it, I was parenting young babies in perimenopause. And so, yeah, I was tired. Having twins is great, but it's also hard. And those early years were exhausting. And whether we chalk that up to, the sleep deprivation, the newborn phase, a combination of that and perimenopause. I mean, I'd say yes, all of the above.
And it
Yeah,
makes
so I think that,
I was just going to say, it makes it quite complicated to try, like, firstly, just being that person to try and understand it. But I guess from your point of view, within your business and what you do as well, you've got a lot to unpack in order to kind of,
yeah.
I guess, well, this is just me guessing, you have to get to the root of the situation before you can then put steps to move forwards and kind of make changes to try and make the outcome better for your clients.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, what I see often, no matter really the genesis, like no matter what the origin, if you like, or the root cause is for why we might be turning to food for comfort, what what I think, in my experience and what I've come to understand from working with many women in this stage of life, but even in my own personal experience too, is it does seem to be rooted in this inability that many of us have to tolerate discomfort and tolerate our negative emotions. So for whatever reason, if we're tired, if we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, whether that be because we're a parent of young children, whether that be because we're in perimenopause or menopause or even postmenopause, whether that be because we're experiencing some kind of situational difficulty in our life that's out of our control, like whatever those reasons are, the crux of it that I find is that we're having real difficulty managing our emotional experience. We're having difficulty tolerating the discomfort that comes from being human. And so that's a lot of my teachings, and all the programs that I create for my clients. It is around learning that skill. How do I tolerate discomfort? How do I tolerate the natural ups and downs that I'm going to feel from being human, from living life that, is not without challenges, and learning then to tolerate that discomfort in a way that where I'm not kind of doing these short-term strategies or these temporary fixes or these quick fixes, if you like, that
Mm.
provide short-term relief, but they do nothing for me in the long term.
I think that is so, what you've just said, I can so resonate with. So, I'm a personal trainer, and so many people want quick fixes. They want to get the bikini body, but they want it in 2 weeks' time, or they want to lose weight, or they want to do it in like a really short amount of time. And effectively, you could do that, but as you said, it's about the sustainability of it all, isn't it? And I try really hard to put across things take time, don't they? They take time. And I think that if you want a quick fix, you will get it, but it doesn't last. And then everything kind of then falls back and it goes back and back and back on itself. And you end up in either the same situation you were in before, or in some cases, it's even worse than you're experiencing because you kind of had this short-term high. And then all of a sudden, you kind of like grounded again, thinking, I've got it, I've done my goal, I'm here. But actually, it's about habit, it's about lifestyle changes, and it's about making it work in your day-to-day life, and therefore it looks different for every single person. I don't know if you find the same with your clients there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I think that those short-term, fixes come at a cost.
Mm,
Um, they, yes, they can provide temporary relief, but what we're often doing is it's another avoidance strategy. Rather than dealing with painful emotions, rather than learning to tolerate them and accepting that life, can be challenging at times, we we turn to food or we do other things, right, that offer us that temporary relief, but that doesn't last, as you said. We're
mm,
still left with the situation at the end of the day, or like you mentioned, we're even worse off. So it does have, I think, unintended consequences. And one of the big things that I see is often women might turn to food or even alcohol for comfort,
mm.
or to soothe themselves, to feel better kind of in that temporary moment. But that in the long run, what that ends up doing is just making them feel really bad about themselves
Yeah,
because of all the unintended
definitely.
consequences that happen, right? They
Yeah.
might start putting on weight, or they might start feeling sluggish, because they're having a lot of convenience foods or whatever it is. And that's obviously not what they wanted. That wasn't the
Mm.
intended outcome, but that's what we're getting, you know.
Yeah, and as I think you said in originally about it's the idea of trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of cope with these feelings of discomfort. I loved that phrase that you used about the idea of us and what we tolerate in a moment of discomfort and what we don't, and how it leads to all of these different things. And I was just wondering, in terms of kind of your business and what you do for your clients to help these women, how do you help them navigate this idea of discomfort? Because I think as a woman, especially when you're going through perimenopause, especially as a mother as well, because as you said, those two things happen at the same time. And from your experience as well, you were kind of navigating to not just one small baby, but I mean, twins blows my mind. So I'm in complete awe of you anyhow. But looking after two children, looking after yourself, looking after this discomfort, which is so unpredictable. So what kind of ways do you kind of like help the women that you work with unpack this so that they can move forward? Like, do you have, I mean, I don't know about you, I love a list. And I know you can't put everything into a list, but sometimes you're like, oh, this could happen, or this could happen, and this could happen. And it's kind of like a heads up, because I think a lot of these things actually, before you become a parent, and definitely before you enter into perimenopause, people don't talk about them. So, do you have ways that you try to kind of like help mitigate and navigate women through these situations, that you could suggest or talk about, or any examples you'd like to share?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I do have my online group coaching program that obviously goes into much more detail about all of this. But one of
Mm.
the things that I really emphasize in my program and in my work with women, even individually, is learning to acknowledge and address the impossible standards that are placed on us as women. So I have to actively resist the patriarchal notion of, the perfect mother,
Oh gosh,
because
yes.
I know that to some degree I've been socialized into a certain role to perform certain duties, and I can inadvertently place a lot of pressure on myself to be productive, to care for the kids, and sacrifice my own needs for theirs.
Yeah.
And so I work on this part of myself, and I help other women and mothers to work on being fierce advocates for their own well-being as much as for their children. And the way that I approach life, I suppose, and my work, to be the best version of myself is, and the way that I teach women to do this too, is to remember what really matters to you. I think we can get lost in expectations and the pressure to be, the good wife or the good mother or good woman. And we risk losing the purpose and meaning of why we do what we do. And
I think,
so
carry
I
on.
place a lot, yeah, sorry. I place a lot of emphasis. I was just going to say that, I place a lot of emphasis in my programs on like body positivity, feminist principles, because I think that so much of the problems that we face as women are wrapped into that social conditioning that we've experienced. And so I help women connect more with their personal values rather than the ones that they either knowingly or unknowingly feel pressured to live by. Um, because I think that as women, we are conditioned to reach or to to strive to reach some unattainable targets and ideals in terms of how productive we need to be, and even in how we're supposed to look and feel and behave. And I think it's important that we challenge those ideals and ask ourselves, is this something that I really want and need? Is this benefiting me?
I agree with every single thing that you just said there. And I think we have to do that. And it's actually a really difficult conversation to have with ourselves and to, well, sometimes even just to find the time to sit down and think about those kind of things is really, really challenging. But Yes, I agree. Like, why do we put these pressures on ourselves? Because we feel that we should, because as you said, socialization or what's expected. I mean, social media has got a big part to play in this nowadays, hasn't it? And it's just it's so difficult to try and navigate this. So from what you've just said, the way that you approach your work and the ladies that you work with sounds so holistic that you don't just focus really on the eating. And I think quite often eating is actually it's symptomatic rather than the root cause of what's going on. And therefore it's kind of the eating part is almost like in for want of a better term, but the cry for help. And then it's having to kind of backtrack and build backwards through all the other parts to kind of move forwards. So
Yeah.
I love what you do. It just sounds so incredible, and it just sounds like you're so passionate about it as well. So, just to kind of like develop a little bit further from that, I'd like to hear a bit more about you. So, you said obviously you've got twins. Like, how old are your
Yeah.
twins now?
Yeah, they'll be 9 in a couple months.
Oh wow, so they're nine. Goodness me, that's still they're still in that kind of like lovely age of still kind of so excited about everything still, aren't they? But you then look at them and you're like,
Yes.
my goodness, you're getting older and older. How has this happened?
Yeah, yeah, it does seem to have flown by.
Oh, wow. So you've got your twins. But tell us a bit about your journey. So have you always worked in this field, or have you kind of, did you start somewhere else? And how has your journey developed in terms of your business and evolved through being a parent?
Yeah, yeah. So as I said earlier, I did become a first-time mom at the age of 40. So prior to that, I was already a psychologist, but I was actually in a completely different sort of specialty. I was working as a forensic psychologist. And so I worked a lot with, I guess, in the legal system and dealing with assessing and treating offenders. And I guess that experience really helped me to develop a very non-judgmental, empathic approach because when you're, dealing with people who come to you and are telling you some of the pretty awful things that they've done, it you really have no other choice if you want to help them and work with them to be empathic and non-judgmental, right? So that
Mm,
was, it was very good training for that. And then when I decided I wanted to have children, and again, I was a bit of a late bloomer, so I did decide quite late in life. It came very suddenly that I fell pregnant very quickly, but twins was a complete surprise.
mm,
I do have twins in the family, but I just didn't think it would happen. It wasn't on my radar, so to speak. So after having twins, though, my career completely changed because I am living in Australia, away from, you can tell from my accent that I'm not originally Australian. So I had no family support here. And so I became, I guess, I've gone from a full-time sort of career to then working part-time and raising children. And I needed more flexible work, basically.
mm,
And so I decided to work for myself. And I went into private practice, which I dabbled a little bit in previously, but not to the same degree. And then I changed, I guess, my focus to work more with parents and more with mothers, and in particular, moms of multiples. And I did that for a while too. And I started seeing, and it's kind of funny. It's sort of like the life that you live. You sort of attract the people who are at a similar sort of stage to you. But I
mm, yes.
started yeah, so I started noticing I was getting a lot of clients around my age, perimenopausal women, women who were maybe even already postmenopausal, and they were coming to me with all sorts of different issues. But eventually, particularly if they were coming to me when their mental health had deteriorated and then they became stable, we'd done a lot of treatment, a lot of work together, they would say to me, "Oh, I don't know if this is something you could help me with, but." I notice I eat a lot and I overeat and I don't know if it's a problem, but I think I might be kind of emotional or like stress eating, And so more and more women were coming with me telling me about this and I decided because I was already working on this with women one to one and getting a lot of success and women telling me how much the work because obviously I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not focused on necessarily what they're eating and telling them about giving them a meal plan or anything like that. My focus is much more on the emotional management. But what
Mm.
they were telling me was when they did that work, it had this like spill on effect, if you like. Like it started to, they started noticing that they were living better. Not only were they feeling better, but they were living better. Like their relationships were improving, the relationships with their children, with their partner. They were just, more fulfilled, more satisfied. And it was because we were getting at the real issue, which was what I said earlier, learning to tolerate the discomfort that comes from being human and from suffering, and learning to manage those emotions so that we don't turn to food, we don't turn to alcohol, we don't turn to all these other short-term fixes.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And so I decided I wanted to package this into more of a group program where we could have a community of women supporting one another. And that's where I've landed.
That is just so wonderful. I love the fact that, as you said, it's almost fallen to you, hasn't it? It's kind of come to
Yes,
you
yeah.
as like a gift almost, because it sounds like you just being in a situation and then people saw you as a go-to person and then it's just developed and developed. And the fact that that you do it in a community setting, I actually think is one of the most powerful things because I think it makes people feel less alone, doesn't it? It makes you
Yeah.
feel like I'm going through this and I'm finding this really challenging. And you go from thinking nobody else can be in the same situation, it's just got to be me. But actually, it can be felt by so many people. And I think,
Yeah.
firstly, feeling that can be really empowering because you think, okay, it's not just me, it can be a wider thing. And then obviously having all the experience that you had or have as a mother of multiples, as you said, being a psychologist, and then bringing the two together, which has allowed you to have a more flexible working lifestyle and improving all the lives of these women. It just sounds amazing. It sounds like such a brilliant thing. And I wonder, I don't know what you think about it. Do you think you may have gone down this route if you hadn't had twins, or if maybe you hadn't moved to Australia? Do you think you'd be in a similar situation? I mean, it's hard to say because you can't
Yeah.
change things, but I don't know. Do you think this would have
Yeah.
been where you saw yourself going, say, 10 years ago before your children were born?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I often do ponder on it. And I think, what would have happened had I, not come to Australia, had I not
Mm.
met my partner here, had I not had children? Like I mean, I guess we'll never know, but it certainly wasn't where I saw my life heading when I
Mm.
embarked on becoming a psychologist and, studying and doing my doctorate. It's not where I thought I would be, but I think I love the word that you used earlier, the gift. And I think it has been a gift. It has been a real privilege to be not only a mother to multiples and to experience the joy in that and the uniqueness of raising two babies at the same time. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm.
Um, it's not only been a privilege to be a mother of multiples, as I said, but it's also been a privilege to work with women that I work with. And I think, one of the things I see, and it really does make me feel, a lot of empathy for women is I see so many women that feel so guilty and so ashamed of, either the way they look um, or this behavior, turning to
Mm.
food when they're stressed and kind of going into the pantry at night and snacking when the kids have gone to bed and, hiding the candy wrappers and the chocolate wrappers from their loved ones because they don't want people to know that
Yeah.
this is what they're doing. And so there can be, I mean, that not everybody does that, but there are some people that do that.
Mm.
And there can be a lot of shame and guilt around it. So just touching on what you said earlier about community, I think it is very powerful when we can come together and women can say, I do this too. And there's a reason for that, right? And there's a reason that we are we're conditioned, I really do believe this. We're conditioned in a way to feel that guilt and to feel that shame. And I love being able to help women let go of that.
I think you're exactly right, actually. And I think it's really sad that we are conditioned to feel that way. But I agree with you. I've seen it myself. So, on the flip side of that, thinking about you now, what do you do? So, you help all these women to kind of get through the discomfort and to actually thrive. So, how about you? How do you thrive running a business yourself, having your children, and also being Christina? What does happy and thriving mean to you? And how do you try and prioritize that in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that this is something that I don't think you ever achieve, like in the sense that I don't think it's a goal that you tick off and say, yeah, I've done it. I
I
think
agree.
it's yeah, like I think it's an ongoing process and we have to actively work on it. But one of the things that I'm really a strong believer in is that as women, we need to not be afraid to invest in ourselves, both in terms of time, energy, all of that, but even money. Like what I often see is women and I've done this too. We become mothers and we say things like, "Oh yeah, I really should go to the doctor for that particular issue," or I need to go to the physiotherapist," or "I should see a psychologist or a coach for this, but I don't have the time right now." Maybe when the kids are older, or I can't afford it. Many people will say that to me too. They'll be like, "I really want to do your program, but I can't afford it." And for most of the women I work with, I know there will be some exceptions to this, but for the most part. I find that most women, they do have some time and they do have some money, but they're simply choosing to spend it on something else other than themselves. And what I also see some women do is, and this isn't a judgment in any way, because there's nothing inherently wrong with this, but some women do choose to spend their time and money on things or services that provide that, what we were talking about before, that short-term relief. So,
Mm.
some examples here might be they might go get their hair done or their nails done, or they might buy themselves a nice pair of shoes or book themselves in for a massage. And again, none of these things are inherently bad. But what I would always encourage women to do, and I have to do this too, like actively ask myself, how is this purchase or this service, how is it benefiting me in the long term? Am I doing this stuff to feel better in the moment? Is it having any long lasting effects on my physical and emotional well being? Because I think as soon as we put our own health on the back burner, we tend to run into problems pretty easily. So, what I do is I'm a firm believer in preventative health strategies rather than reactive. So, I spend a lot of time, I suppose, looking after myself physically and mentally. I do take effort with my diet, if you like, and the foods that I eat. And I take effort in terms of how often I get exercise and the type of exercise that I'm doing. And, I spend the time and the energy on myself and make myself a priority as much as my children. Because for me, taking a proactive approach before things get bad, um, before things get serious or take a turn for the worse, is probably in my opinion, the better approach.
I completely agree with you. I think it's that old adage, isn't it? Prevention is better than cure. And I think if we can try and portray that message across more, and people actually start taking it on board and not feeling guilty for it. I think the guilt is a big thing, as we've already touched on. It can be so life-changing, so life-changing. And I think that it's just kind of like that chipping away to try and get people to kind of understand that a little bit better. So, moving on to kind of our final questions now. From your experience, if you could suggest some advice, I know you've just given some brilliant advice, but if you had a couple of tips, up to three, as many as you have, what do you recommend people do to be a happy, thriving mum from either your personal point of view or a professional point of view or a combination of the two? What would be your biggest pieces of advice for people to try?
Yeah, okay. I think that's a great question. And I think, as we were speaking, and maybe trying to sum this and bring it all together, sum it up and bring it all together. I think the key to thriving, in my opinion, I guess, is being able to make a commitment to living the life you want to live and being the person you want to be, despite how you're feeling. So despite the challenges. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. In fact, I think that's at the very heart of what I do and teach in my programs for women. It's about supporting women to make healthier choices in all aspects of life, not just when it comes to food. And I think what this requires is an acknowledgement that sometimes we do need help and guidance to thrive. So we aren't meant to be completely autonomous, independent individuals. It's okay to seek help when you need it. And one of the things that I love seeing is when a woman or a mother comes to me either in one of my coaching programs or comes to me for individual therapy, and they come to a realization after working with me that their ability to tolerate discomfort and manage their own thoughts and feelings has a direct impact not only on the quality of their own life, but also for their family. It isn't about perfect action. I don't want anyone listening to this and thinking, oh, but I have so many flaws. I yell at the kids way too much. I don't get enough done around the house. I eat too much. I don't exercise enough. And on we could go. And I'll say it again because I think it's worth emphasizing. It isn't about being perfect. It's about being a strong advocate for yourself and making a commitment to living a life in accordance with what matters to you.
I love that. That is so great. I mean, that's about 10 different things rolled into one there, isn't it? So just the whole idea of making a commitment to living the life that you want to live and to be who you want to be. As you said, that is amazing. That is such a great thing to do. And it's not easy, but I guess if we really do commit to that, you can get there. And then your second kind of like takeaway there is about not taking perfect action, not comparing yourself to this perfection and this vision which we're kind of almost like emblazoned with, which doesn't exist. It just does not exist, does it? And just allowing yourself to have the grace and the courage to be like, I might not be doing everything I should be doing in inverted commas, but I'm doing my best. I'm trying and I am moving forwards. I think that is two brilliant messages. So thank you so much for sharing those. And finally, Christina, where can the listeners find you? Where can they see what you're doing, arrange maybe a chat with you and try and, if they want to work with you, where can they see you?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a link that we can put in the podcast show notes where people
Yeah,
can book a free consultation with me to see if my services might be a good fit for them. And they can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. I've just started those accounts. So I'd love the support if you want to give me a follow. And I'd be there under Dr. Cristina Cavezza. But we can put those links in
yeah,
the show notes, can't we,
yes,
Amanda? Yeah.
definitely.
So that's probably the best
Amazing.
way of reaching out to me.
Perfect. Well, I could have just sat here and talked with you all day, Christina. There's a lot of questions I have personally that I might like to have to unpack with you another time. But thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. And I really hope that you have a lovely day. And so I know anyone that listens to this is going to get so much from it. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you being on.
Thanks, Amanda. It was lovely meeting you.
Thank you.